Hello, and welcome to the Passion Driven Pioneers interview series. I'm your host, John Channon, and today I'm joined by Dr. Andrew Jones, who is the CEO and founder of CARBA. Dr. Jones, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are and what you do, and also the business that you're in?
Sure, happy to. So I'm Andrew Jones. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CARBA. My background, I'm actually a scientist by training. So I did chemical engineering at the University of Minnesota, where I studied biofuels and pyrolysis of biomass to all sorts of different products. Ended up going to UC Berkeley to do a PhD in chemical engineering, also in biofuels and catalysis type work. And then I started a company right out of my PhD, moved back to Minnesota and built analytical detectors and equipment for measuring things like greenhouse gases, biofuels, pyrolysis gases, and a whole host of things. That company, we just successfully sold off 2 products to Shimatsu Corporation out of Japan. And about 3 years ago, I shifted my focus and said, how can I make a bigger impact on the planet? There's this big need for carbon dioxide removal. And, we need solutions that just don't exist yet. And so I started working with a friend of mine who's a professor at the University of Minnesota. And we started looking at how can we possibly remove billions of tons of CO2 from the air and then store it somewhere permanently. And we came up with the idea of CARBA, and we started scaling that. And so we're in the midst of startup number 2 for me.
That's cool. So you mentioned, right, you wanted to do something bigger. What was that spark, that initial spark that led you to take the entrepreneurial leap with this type of business?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, my previous business, it's analytical technology, which is more niche. It's still a big market and still very important for pushing science and the boundaries of science. But it wasn't that direct impact on carbon removal, like or some decarbonization aspect. And so I really realized that I had the potential to do something big. And if you think big, that's the only way big things are going to happen. And so I wanted to take a stab at it. And I wanted to see if my skills, my background, my connections could really make a dent in something as big as climate or the planet. And I realized that we need all hands on deck with this. And so it was really a moment for me to realize I need to try it. If not now, then when? And so I jumped headfirst into that, and it's been a blast.
Yeah, if not now, then when? And if not you, then who, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I was a part of a National Science Foundation SBIR cohort, and they gave something very inspirational. He said, look, you guys are in the United States, some of the best scientists in the world, and we're giving you money. In this case, it was $200,000 to $500,000. So if you're not going to do it, who else in the world is going to do it? And, it's true. I think a lot of us can look into ourselves and say, hey, we're given all these opportunities being here in the United States, having these resources and educations. And, we have the opportunity and probably responsibility to step up.
Yeah, that's really interesting and good. And it's good to have people, right, that are willing to do these types of things, right? Because with great opportunity comes great responsibility.
Yes.
So this is your second startup. So what are some common misconceptions about running a business? And then what might be some things that you might be doing differently during this startup that you learned in your first one?
Those are really good questions. And I've definitely learned a lot. I've done all the wrong things and some of the right things in all ways. And I've definitely worn all the hats. I've been the first janitor. I've caught a mouse in our building. I've, and everything up to CEO. I think what I didn't realize going into this, and I don't have a formal business education. I took classes at Haas at Berkeley and some market and product type courses, but I didn't understand the importance of building out the sales and marketing team with industry relevance, and the importance of really understanding. It sounds obvious when I say it, but the customer and what the customer's buying journey looks like. And in my old company, there's a lot of regulation, an activated research company, and there's a lot of barriers to purchase. that I didn't really understand. And so that led to longer and longer runways and different needs for a company, and was very difficult. In CARBA, I realized very early on the importance of the team and getting the right people with the right experience in early on. And so that was kind of first and foremost, less so than the technology. You know, coming as an engineer, you think, oh, I can create the best technology and everyone's gonna buy it and woo over it. And that's just not true at all. There's so many reasons that won't work unless you execute well and if the market timing is right. I've heard that the number one reason for companies to fail is market timing, that maybe the market's not ready for it, or there's regulation, or there's other things. And I found that to be true. And so with CARBA, it was about, I really started it with market timing because the markets for carbon removal were starting to take off. It's still a nascent market. And the buyers were looking at it, the regulatory framework was starting to build up. And so it really was a good time to jump in, and the VCs were following it. And so there was funding and sort of a tailwind. So you're not fighting a headwind. So that market timing was first, team was second. You know, we need the right people in there to execute. And that means getting ideally people from the industry. Now with CARBA, it's such a nascent industry that you can't really find people that have been selling carbon removal credits, for example. But finding people that can think like that or that have adjacencies, and building out that customer journey and who are these buyers and what are they looking for, and how do they make decisions, and how do we help fill that and provide the best solution for them. That's taken a long time to learn, and it kind of sounds obvious when you're saying it out loud. And then the Crossing the Chasm book, I love that book. It's, you know, the early adopters and then the chasm of death that kills a lot of startups, and then getting into mass market. And I think, you know, in CARBA, we're still very much in the early adopters. People are saying, yeah, we want to try carbon removal, want to try it on, see if it fits. But the mass market's probably a few years away, if not more. And it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. So you need enough runway to get through that and to understand the expectations of growth.
Yeah, we refer to that chasm of death as the 3 feet from gold trap, right? You're in that downswing down there, and you got to keep working it.
Yeah, 3 feet can be miles in the startup world.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift gear a little bit. This is your second startup again, right? Talk about how you maintain work-life balance as a business owner. And then do you have any personal rituals or habits that keep you motivated and focused?
Yeah, I think I've struggled with this, as many people have. In my PhD world, I was all in and didn't have a work-life balance, and kind of regretted that. And then in activated research company, I definitely worked, didn't have as much of a work-life balance. I have 2 young kids, and so when they came along, I've luckily been smart enough to spend a lot of time with them. One thing that's helped is just setting boundaries, whether it's time or, you know, turning off notifications and not checking email. So I do try to time block parts of my life, whether it's email, I'm going to spend X amount of hours. Email can easily consume an entire day. And so if I don't time block it, I'm not going to get anything real done. And so I usually try to time block that and pick a part of the day that I'm going to do that, but also time blocking parts of the week. So right now I time block Tuesdays and Thursdays for certain things. Mondays I front load with a lot of meetings, for better or worse. And then Wednesdays and Fridays I leave more open for things that come in. I've also created routines to stay sane. So I've started working out more. And that just gets me through the week. Every morning I can work out, and I do the crazy cold plunge at our local gym here, and it's fantastic. It sucks when you're in it because it's about 40 degrees, but when you get out, the rest of the day you feel amazing. And that's become a part of my routine really more recently, and just trying to get some outlet there. There's a lot of studies that being out in nature really help to center yourself and step away from technology. So I do try to spend as much time outside We were just talking about Minnesota. It's been the warmest year on record, almost like we predicted this, but it's been easier in a lot of ways to get out, but also harder because we don't have our winter sports that we're so used to.
Yeah. So you mentioned that I think you referred to your industry as a nascent industry. So it's in process of evolving. So how do you stay adaptable and open to change right now in this type of industry?
Yeah, you certainly have to be flexible, and things are changing literally by the week. A lot of the regulatory folks we work on are registries, certification boards. They're changing contracts. They're changing how they do business. They're removing or adding marketplaces and other things. So we have to keep an open mind that the way we're doing it today is definitely not going to be the way that we do it in the future. And I think hiring people that can be adaptable is key. And that's really hard to see in an interview, right? Is someone going to work well in this? And that pulling people from larger companies and bringing them into the entrepreneurship startup journey, which has a lot of change and a lot of ambiguity, can be difficult sometimes. And so hiring becomes incredibly important. And yeah, staying on top of these things as they change can be difficult.
Good. Well, thanks for that. I know a lot of industries some industries change slower than others. It sounds like yours is kind of still evolving.
Yeah. So the analytical world is a dinosaur. It's very, very slow. It's highly regulated. The new technology cycle is 40 years plus. And then you contrast that with, AI, where it's week by week it's changing. And then carbon removal is somewhere in the middle, but closer to the AI right now because it's such a new market. And honestly, that's a great place for startups to be because we're going to move and change a lot faster than big companies. So I would encourage, if you're looking to do a startup, that's not some sort of service business. If you're looking to do a startup, those are the types of markets you probably want to be looking at because that's where your advantage is going to really play over the big guys who are pretty slow to change.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Let's stay on kind of focusing on the future. So could you offer maybe a glimpse into your future plans and goals for your business? Because I know you mentioned that, you wanted to do something bigger and have a bigger impact.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I jumped into CARBA because I want to actually make change in the climate. And to do that, we need to remove billions of tons of carbon dioxide. And that necessitates $1 trillion market. And so billions of tons at $100 a ton, that's 100, at 1 billion a ton a year, that's $100 billion a year in revenue. And that's sort of the price that's the moonshot goal for the Department of Energy is $100 per ton. To get there, we need to scale rapidly. And so my future plans are to get to that $100 billion revenue in sort of the next 10 to 20 years. And it's definitely possible. There's a lot of variables that could make that happen or not happen. But, that's my goal, is to grow this rapidly and to make a meaningful dent in climate change so that we avoid these, the worst effects of climate change. It's already happening, but if we can prevent 2 degrees C or even 2.5 degrees C, then we can prevent a lot of the really bad effects.
Yeah, and you need to do this sooner than later too. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's already happening. We're seeing ocean acidification and bleaching of corals. We're seeing sea level rises. We're seeing natural disasters increase. And so we're in the midst of it. We're at over 1.5 degrees C warming so far. And we really need meaningful action in the next decade, probably in the next 6 years, to kind of stop this from happening. And if we don't, there's turning points too where it becomes even more difficult. So definitely, reducing fossil fuel usage, but also we have to remove the legacy carbon from the atmosphere, or all the models show that we won't get to where we need to be. So I'm hopeful that we can do it because we have the technology to do it. We have the know-how and we can do it affordably. And also the world is moving that direction. We've made a ton of progress. Solar is very cheap. I just got a quote on my house for we just got a new house that doesn't have solar, and so $2 a watt to put it on your roof, and that's incredibly cheap. And so we've made a ton of progress with science and technology and policy, and we can do it. So that it's a message of hope, and hopefully I'd love to be a part of it if I can be. And we have big plans.
Yeah, and that is really cool. And what's interesting is moving in this direction. It's just not startups that are doing this, right? Excel Energy has got a commitment to reducing their carbon footprint and converting more of their energy generation to solar and wind, and getting out of the coal industry. So I think it's really everybody's starting to work on this together, which is cool to see.
Totally. Nearly every company who's anybody has a carbon sort of net neutrality plan. And this includes the oil and gas companies like Exxon and Shell and others. They have plans to be net zero by 2030 or 2050. We've talked to companies in all different sectors that are doing this. And part of that is electrification and reduction efficiency. And another part of that is carbon removal for the stuff that's hard to abate. Things like airline fuels, or things like diesel and biofuels. And so we're a big part of that, and we're excited to see this progress from all these different companies. It's really good to see.
So knowing that this show and interview series is really directed towards entrepreneurs and people that are in maybe their first couple of years worth of business, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, definitely. I personally love entrepreneurship. I wouldn't be doing anything else, but I also wouldn't recommend it for anybody because it can be a tough road. It can be a strain on relationships. It can be a strain on your time. It can be a strain on your financial situation. And so I think you have to understand what you're getting into and the risks associated with it, and go in eyes wide open. I think there's a lot of potential with small business and entrepreneurship, and I think it's the backbone of our economy. And so it's incredibly important, and what you're doing is incredibly important, and I love it, and I want to encourage it. There's a lot of resources out there for folks that are doing this, and I would just encourage you to take advantage of it and hang in there. If you can keep going, it's that tenacity. I think that's my greatest strength. And so, keep doing it and get through it. If you can will it, you can make it happen.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Jones. It was great meeting you and learning more about your entrepreneurial journey. And to everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Fantastic. Thank you, John.